Cuba will continue to act as a guarantor for the implementation of the peace agreement between the government of Colombia and the FARC-EP, despite attacks on its role. New York City is painting a Black Lives Matter mural on the street directly outside of Trump Tower in Midtown Manhattan. Sudan began loosening lockdown measures in and around the capital Khartoum on Wednesday after 3 months of strict restrictions. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Cuba, where Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Rogelio Sierra, confirmed this Thursday that the island will continue to act as a guarantor of the implementation of the peace agreement between the government of Colombia and the FARC-EP. Sierra expressed that Cuba expects the Republic of Colombia to recognize the validity of the agreement signed with other states and to comply with these commitments, in particular with the protocol for the breakdown of talks with the National Liberation Army. The Cuban Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement on June 4th denouncing the acts of political manipulation regarding Cuba's role in the Colombian peace process, which served as a pretext for the United States to include Cuba on its unilateral list of states that allegedly do not cooperate fully with the U.S. in its efforts against terrorism.
Cuba has been receiving requests from the international community, also from prominent personalities of Colombian society, asking Cuba to maintain its condition of guarantor in Colombia's peace process. Taking these requests into account, Cuba, and that is the reason why I invited you this morning, Cuba has decided to maintain for the time being the condition of guarantor in the peace process, in the implementation of the peace process between the FARC and the Colombian government. At the same time, we want to say that Cuba expects the Colombian government to fulfill the agreements it has signed with other nations, with other states, including Cuba in its condition of guarantor, and particularly the implementation of the protocols of rupture of the peace talks between the Colombian government and the ELN.
In Colombia, the Special Jurisdiction for Peace demanded information from the mayor's office in Medellin regarding 108 missing persons in Commune 13. The International Center for Transitional Justice noted the existence in this commune of some 435 possible victims of forced disappearance between 1978 and 2016. The ICTJ has information on 327 cases, but none on the remaining 108. The organization called on the Medellin Mayor's Office, the Public Prosecutor's Office, and the National Administrative Department of Statistics to publish the information they have on these cases within 10 days. Commune 13 is a popular neighborhood in Medellin that has been severely impacted by the armed conflict in Colombia. This Thursday, Argentina celebrates the 204th anniversary of its independence, with a main ceremony held by video conference due to the novel coronavirus pandemic. President Alberto Fernandez will remotely lead the main ceremony, which will take place in the historical House of Tucumán, known as the House of Independence. Governor Juan Luis Mansur and other provincial authorities will be present at the site where in 1816 Argentina's Act of Independence was signed. This year, the celebrations will not include the traditional military parade.
When I leave the government, it is my desire that we have a federal Argentina, where each Argentinian has the possibility of finding their future in the same place where they were born, that they can live happily there, and that when he or her passes away, they are able to say how happy they were living in the place they were born. To all Argentinians, happy Homeland Day. A new Argentina begins today.
In Brazil, 7 parliamentary groups have described Jair Bolsonaro's veto of a law that seeks to guarantee access to basic medical and economic services for indigenous communities during the pandemic as a genocidal policy. The bill, which was approved by Congress, establishes indigenous peoples and Afro-Colombians as groups in a situation of extreme vulnerability. However, the Brazilian president defended his veto of several aspects of the legislation, arguing that the benefits included by legislators generate additional expenses and go against public interest. In response to these statements, 7 parliamentary fronts denounced that these impediments are a sign of disrespect and irresponsibility towards the Brazilian people. And Brazil has now surpassed 68,000 COVID-19 deaths and has reported more than 1.7 million cases. Over the last 24 hours, the South American giant reported more than 41,000 new cases and over 1,000 fatalities. The epicenter of the outbreak continues to be the state of Sao Paulo. After testing positive for COVID-19, President Jair Bolsonaro claimed that thanks to the use of hydroxychloroquine, he's in good health, although the drug has been rejected by the World Health Organization. And we're taking a very short break now, so don't go away. From the south, New York City is painting a Black Lives Matter mural on the street directly outside of Trump Tower in Midtown Manhattan. Members of the community, joined by New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, gathered this Thursday to paint the mural across the street from Trump Tower, similar to the one painted outside the White House. President Trump mocked the mural plan last week, saying it would denigrate the luxury avenue and antagonize the city's police as a symbol of hate. Meanwhile, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has stressed it is his administration's way of honoring the black men and women who helped build New York. According to local media, Fifth Avenue will be closed between 56th and 57th Streets until Sunday morning to finish the work. This Thursday, top leaders of the Pentagon are offering testimony to Congress. The House Armed Services Committee is hearing testimony by Defense Secretary Mark Esper and General Mark Milley, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, for the first time since March 4th. The top Pentagon leaders will face a long list of questions, including regarding Trump's push for an aggressive response to the civil unrest over police brutality and systemic racism, which led to a clash between Esper and Milley. Esper has defended the use of National Guard soldiers to support law enforcement agencies. On June 1st, a National Guard helicopter was flown at extremely low altitude to help disperse protesters from the Capitol streets, allowing Trump to walk from the White House to St. John's Church, prompting a Pentagon investigation into whether that was a proper use of military resources.
Mr. Barr's actions make clear that in his Department of Justice,
Greenpeace deployed a large banner from a crane overlooking Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris this Thursday, demanding the French government take action on climate change. Greenpeace activists accuse France and President Emmanuel Macron of not doing enough to fight climate change. The group wants tougher laws on emissions and accuses Macron of making empty promises. Macron announced 15 billion euros in new climate measures last week after Green Party candidates did well in municipal elections across the country. The Director General of the World Health Organization reiterated on Thursday his calls for global unity in the fight against the novel coronavirus and stressed the general lack of leadership in the midst of the pandemic.
My friends, make no mistake. The greatest threat we face now is not the virus itself. Rather, it's the lack of leadership and solidarity at the global and national levels. That's why I said earlier, each and every individual should reflect. This is a tragedy that actually is forcing us to miss many of our friends, losing many lives. And we cannot defeat this pandemic as a divided world. The COVID-19 pandemic is a test of global solidarity and global leadership. The virus thrives on division, but is thwarted when we unite.
And the World Health Organization has announced it is launching an independent pandemic response panel headed by former New Zealand Prime Minister Helen Clark and former Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to evaluate the agency's response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
With this in mind, I'm proud to announce that former Prime Minister Helen Clark and former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and also a Nobel laureate, have agreed to serve as co-chairs of the evaluation committee, which we're calling the Independent Panel for Pandemic Preparedness and Response, IPPR. And we cannot defeat this pandemic as a divided world. The COVID-19 pandemic is a test of global solidarity and global leadership. The virus thrives on division, but is thwarted when we unite. COVID-19 has taken so much from us. But it's also giving us an opportunity to break with the past and build back better.
According to the International Labour Organization, the coronavirus pandemic has plunged the world of work into an unprecedented crisis. With the soaring number of new infections daily, global leaders participating in the ILO's summit on COVID-19 called for a comprehensive approach to counter the economic and social impact of the deadly pandemic. According to the UN agency, there was a 14% drop in global working hours during the second quarter of 2020, equivalent to the loss of 400 million full-time jobs. This is a sharp increase on the previous estimate, issued on May 27th, of a 10.7% drop, representing 305 million jobs. Russia's defense ministry has warned that terrorists of the al-Nusra Front have produced chemical weapons to use against the Syrian province of Idlib. The chief of the Russian Reconciliation Center for Syria, Rear Admiral Alexander Sharbatsky, said that the terrorist group has manufactured at least 15 explosive devices using unknown toxic substances in a lab in the city of Samara, located in northwest Idlib province. The Rear Admiral also warned that the terrorists are planning to carry out provocative acts in the area with the purpose of accusing government forces of using chemical weapons. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Xiao Lishan has announced that China will hold a new round of military talks with India over the border tensions.
China and India will continue to maintain dialogue and communication through military and diplomatic channels, including by holding a new round of commander-level talks and meeting of the working mechanism for consultation and coordination of China-India border affairs. We hope India can work together with China, implement each consensus reached by both sides through concrete actions, work together to advance further de-escalation and easing of the situation in the border region.
And China's Foreign Ministry has condemned Australia's decision to suspend an extradition pact and offer refuge to thousands of Hong Kong citizens.
Australia's relevant comments and the measures they announce seriously violate international law and the fundamental principles of international relations, and grossly interfere in China's domestic affairs. China will not accept this. We strongly condemn this and reserve the right to take further responses. All consequences will be borne by Australia. Once again, we remind those studying in Australia to assess the risk and be cautious about choosing to go or return to study in Australia, and remind Chinese people and overseas Chinese people in Australia to take care of their safety.
In Japan, the governor of Tokyo said on Thursday that the spike in new cases of the novel coronavirus is a wake-up call for the city and urged younger people to act responsibly so as not to infect the elderly and other vulnerable people.
There were 224 cases. This is the largest number of cases so far. Those under age 30, including teenagers, these make up 82% of the cases. So there is no change in that it is younger people who are getting infected.
Also in Japan, flooding and mudslides have stranded hundreds of people in central areas of the country, while heavy rains have caused nearly 60 fatalities in the southern region. As of Thursday morning, the death toll from the heavy rains, which started over the weekend, had risen to 59. Most of the victims were from the hardest hit Kumamoto prefecture on Japan's third largest island of Kyushu. Volunteers have mobilized in the rescue and recovery efforts, and temperature checks and face masks have been distributed due to COVID-19 concerns. Weather agency officials said the seasonal rain has been heavier and longer lasting than usual. We have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. From the south. The research and development of COVID-19 vaccines has made positive progress in Vietnam, with plans to start human trials as early as next year. The company for vaccine and biological production, Vabiotech, established by Vietnam's Ministry of Health, is the first company in the country to engage in COVID-19 vaccine research and testing. After Chinese scientists released the genome sequence of the novel coronavirus, the company's researchers immediately began collaborating with scientists from the University of Bristol in the United Kingdom to conduct studies on a possible vaccine.
We expect human testing to be carried out in the next 9 to 12 months, but based on actual research, it could be faster. If we see more considerable results, we will conduct the human testing sooner. As far as the current research and development process is concerned, we have exchanged information with all partners in the world. Maintaining communication can effectively promote our understanding of COVID-19 vaccines, so I think it is necessary to communicate and cooperate with each other.
Sudan began loosening lockdown measures in and around the capital, Khartoum, on Wednesday after 3 months of strict restrictions due to the coronavirus pandemic. The usual bustle of pedestrians and car traffic has returned to Khartoum's streets as shops and restaurants reopened. In April, authorities halted government services and closed local markets and restaurants in Khartoum province, severely restricting daily life in the capital and its twin city, Durman, in order to contain the spread of COVID-19. Sudan's health ministry has reported over 10,000 coronavirus cases, including more than 600 fatalities. The World Health Organization Regional Director for Africa has stressed that COVID-19 vaccines must be available to everyone, not only those with the financial resources to access them.
We know that vaccines are very important for public health, including for the COVID-19. When we have an effective COVID-19 vaccine, it will make sure that it takes into account, if countries have participated, the immune response of populations in Africa. We know also that when we have a vaccine, it'll need to be rolled out at an unprecedented speed and scale. Equity must be a central focus of our efforts. And too often, African countries have ended up at the back of the queue for new technologies, including vaccines. These life-saving products must be made available to everyone, not only those who can afford to pay.
And the World Health Organization has noted that in less than 5 months, COVID-19 has claimed over 12,000 lives across Africa, thus surpassing the death toll of 11,000 in the world's worst Ebola outbreak in West Africa between 2014 and 2016. According to the WHO data, the number of confirmed coronavirus cases in Africa has now surpassed 500,000. WHO Regional Director Dr. Matshidiso Moeti has warned that health systems face an increasing threat of being overwhelmed by the pandemic. The number of cases has more than doubled in 22 countries in the region during the last month. Almost 2/3 of African countries are experiencing community-based transmission. Meanwhile, Algeria, Egypt, Ghana, Nigeria and South Africa account for about 71% of the cases in the continent.
It is a good idea to open...
Nigeria has resumed domestic flights between Lagos and the capital, Abuja, following changes to the country's coronavirus restrictions.
I've been waiting to go back home for a while. I couldn't go by road because of different other challenges, but I felt relieved that the airport will be open at last. So it was a good one. I am a frequent traveler. I don't know when it will get back to normal, but I see this as a good change. We've learned something from the COVID-19. It's something that is negative, but we have got a lot of positives from it.
Some of us, those of us who've come out early are the guinea pigs. So when people see, oh, you went, you came, you've been around a while, nothing is wrong with you, a lot more people get enough confidence to start flying again.
Palestinian activists held a demonstration on Thursday against Israel's plans to annex occupied West Bank territories. Activists called on Palestinian residents to join the ongoing mobilizations to denounce the expansionist plan of the Israeli regime, supported by the United States. Meanwhile, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas stated on Wednesday his readiness to resume talks under the auspices of the UN and other countries, and as long as Israel rules out the annexation of occupied Palestinian land. Hamas and Fatah announced a united front early this month aimed at resisting any annexation moves. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature has warned that almost all species of lemur, the small primates native to Madagascar, face extinction. Of the 107 surviving lemur species on the island, some 103 are threatened, including 33 that are critically endangered, the last step before being declared extinct in the wild. The organisation called for a fundamental reimagining of the way humanity interacts with the natural world in an update to its red list of threatened species. More than 40% of Madagascar's original forest cover was lost between the 1950s and the year 2000. Last year, the United Nations Biodiversity Panel warned that up to 1 million species face the risk of extinction. Now we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.
Population here in New York City is growing. Every day it grows. After this COVID